Hi, everyone. So glad to be here. Our industry has seen some major improvements in marketing over the past decade. And through the years, we've seen the respect for grow. And 2020, for all its calamity, has highlighted promotional products as a way to make real connections in a very disconnected world. And I've been working on some amazing projects over the past few years, particularly over the past year. It's more important than ever we learn how to communicate what we do in a way that's at the level of that impact. So we knew heading into 2021 that we needed help translating all these amazing projects that you're working on into meaningful marketing, which is why we invited Ann Handley to kick off SKUCon. Ann Handley's company, Marketing Profs, is a marketing, training, and education company with more than 1,000 subscribers and has nearly 500,000 followers on Twitter, almost as many on LinkedIn. Her personal newsletter has 45,000 subscribers. She's cringing right now that I'm numbers, but she has like a 40% open rate. Folks listen to what she says, which is why Forbes once cited her as the most influential woman in social media. And as the chief content officer at Marketing Profs, she's the author of Everybody Writes, co-author of the best-selling book on content marketing, Content Rules. And I'm proud to have called Ann a friend for over a decade. Welcome to the stage, Ann Handley. Hi, Ann.
Oh, how are you?
Great, great. Ann, only a writer can name their dog August. Is Augie with you?
Augie is not with me right now. I'm sorry to say. I'm very.
I'm going to show a picture of Augie just so everybody can see. He's wearing SKUCon gear, so he's representing wherever he's at.
He's the best. All right. I prepared something special for you too, Bobby, and to welcome everyone here in this amazing community to SKUCon. So here we go. What do you think of that?
That's awesome. I love it. This is the first of your analog slides?
This is the first, yes. And I actually just found out that this is it SKUBot? Is that his name?
Right, exactly right.
So SKUBot, and shout out to I drew this, so I did the best that I could.
That's pretty damn good. It's pretty damn good.
And can we also just take a second and talk about Bobby's hair? Look at that.
Oh my God. Yeah. Oh, you actually got the hair on it. That's nice.
Yeah, I got the hair in it.
We're only 15 minutes into the event and we're already making fun of my hair. That's awesome.
Well, I do want to point out that your hair is so much more voluptuous than, look at my sad little hair right there. It's like little hat, like a hair helmet, and there's Bobby who's just like.
Right. Okay. I'm gonna get this back on the radio. And we're so glad you made it. You have so many friends here. Such a community that just loves and is inspired by you and all the work you guys have done at Marketing Profs. We're gonna get right into this. In 2021, we all want to do better marketing, tell better stories. You wrote recently that the best marketing strategy is attached to a story. And you speak to some very sophisticated businesses, whether large or small. So how do you convey them? We have folks, let me back up a bit. We have folks with all kinds of experience on this call. We have folks who just got into the business. They're young entrepreneurs who love what they see, but they want to know how to package that better. We have folks that have been in this industry a long time. But regardless of your experience, we're in a new world right now. And we have unique opportunities ahead of us. Because you work with companies large and small, how do you convey to them the importance of story, particularly in light of all the marketing initiatives that we could be working on?
Yeah, so, to me, everything that we do in marketing is grounded in a story of some kind, whether it's our story, or more importantly, whether it's the story of how our products and our services help the people who we sell to, right? How it makes them the hero of our story, essentially. So I think of marketing and story as essentially very much the same. I think that all the best marketing strategy is, in fact, a story. And to your point, Bobby, I think it's so much more relevant now in 2021 in this world that we're living in. Because this is a world where we're overrun with choices, right? We're overrun with opportunities just in our lives in general. We're overrun with content. And so, how does that translate into our marketing, and how do we tell those stories in a way that really breaks through? To me, it comes down to two things. And I just want to share a little bit about how I think about it. So in marketing, our challenge has always been, right, how can I earn someone's attention, right? How can I get someone to pay attention to me? But I think that this is the wrong way to think about our marketing, the wrong lens through which we need to look at our marketing. So it's not, can I have your attention? Instead, it's, how can I earn your trust? So not, can I shout louder? Can I break through? But how do I tell my story in a way that conveys who I am, and that I am the kind of company that you can trust? So to me, it comes down to two things in marketing. And this is true no matter what industry you're in, big or small, but it's especially true for everyone here today. Because here's how I think about it, because this is the lens through which your customers are looking at everything that you do, from your social channels to your website to almost any piece of marketing or piece of collateral that you put out there. They're thinking about trust, and they're thinking about affinity. They're thinking, do they understand my problems best? Are they going to be there for me long-term? Is this going to be part of a long-term relationship? Or are they just going to make a sale and I'm never going to hear from them again? They're not going to support me when maybe something goes wrong. And then the second thing, affinity. Do I like them? And I think that trust and affinity, especially affinity, matters a whole lot in marketing, much more than we really give it credit for, especially when we are businesses selling to businesses. I think the affinity piece matters a whole lot. So how does that roll up to story? It rolls up to story because trust and because story is, in my mind, the way that we do this at scale, right? It's the way that we build camaraderie and affinity and trust at scale. And without story, without the ability to create that kind of emotional hook to convey trust and affinity, I think it's really difficult to earn that kind of trust, to pull people toward you, to get them to stay engaged with you and to engage long term.
And it seems like you've been saying some of this for a while, but COVID-19 and the past year that we've all been through has really accelerated a lot of this, right? The expectations now are much higher for what you're saying.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. Especially in a world where everything is digital. We're not walking into offices anymore. Right. We don't have those in-person connections. And so, yes, I mean, it's accelerated a whole lot of the digital evolution. But I think, in a world where we are interacting with each other like this, this is the best that we could do.
Yeah, we've been saying for a while that marketing is sales, and now that's the case because we are all, like you said, selling through these devices, selling through these new experiences. When it comes to story, I have found that the expert needs story as much as the amateur. So the expert has too many details in their head. They've got too much information. They need the channel of story to make that powerful. And the folks who just get into business need story so they can learn how to explain what it is that they do. What other nuances have you discovered that help tell a good story? Is there a way to simplify it, or at least are there some 4 or 5 major keys to telling a good story?
Yeah, so, to me, the essence of a good story is it mirrors the essence of what is good marketing and what is good content. So I think about it like this. I think about a story or any great content as having clear utility, right? In other words, is it inherently useful for the people that you care the most about, the people that you sell to, the people that you want to attract to your business? Will they read it and think, oh, I didn't know that. That's really useful. Or are they just going to go, So, and then secondly, is it inspired? Is it inspired either by data, something that about the audience, the people that you want to connect with, or is it inspired creatively, or maybe both? And then finally, does it have honest empathy for the people that you care the most about, the people that you want to communicate with? And I say honest empathy because I really want to stress the notion that having a sense of really not just who you're selling to from a demographic standpoint, but really understanding or geographic standpoint, but really understanding the psychographics behind the people you connect with. And that's a high-minded word that basically means, what are they challenged with? Who are they? What do they care about? What are their struggles right now? So is it speaking directly to them? Is it conveying honest empathy? So there are elements of these three things that I think are important to creating ridiculously good content. And I would include story as the foundation of that, as we talked about a minute ago. And by the way, there's a multiplication sign between each of these things, because I think you need elements of these three things in order to create ridiculously good content from your story. Because if you don't have elements of these three things, then I think the product would ultimately be zero, right? So it's not an addition sign, it's a multiplication sign by design.
Oh, that's awesome. I hear from a lot of people that what they sell is boring, or that no one will be interested in having to share their story. What do you say to that? I mean, do you have an example of your favorite brand or brands, or maybe a brand some might consider boring? I mean, some of the work that we've done, we've talked to some consumer products companies, or insurance or finance. They might. Now, we're in a unique medium itself. It's an exciting medium. It's a lot of fun. When we do it right, it is engaging and it makes real connection. You have an opportunity, I think, better than most, to tell exceptional stories. But what do you say to the company that says, I don't really have much of a story to tell?
Yeah, I mean, I first of all, I 100% agree with you. When I was, doing some research for our conversation today and really looking at your audience and everyone here today, looking at your websites and, seeing what you offer, I was like, holy wow, like most companies that I talk to in the business to business space don't have what you have. Like, they don't have anything that's inherently as fun and interesting. I mean, people love promotional products, right? Just right off the bat, like, who doesn't love that? And so I think, just setting that aside for a second, though, yes. So just to say, you do have incredible stories to tell, and you have exciting stories to tell, and really interesting messages that you can convey to the people you care about. So I don't think you have that problem. Let me just say that right up front. But that said, I think any company, no matter how dull or listless or inherently boring a product is, has the opportunity to tell great stories. And one of my favorite examples is, it's probably the most, not just a little dull, but it's a government agency. So automatically you're thinking, oh God, how can they possibly have a great story to tell, number one. But secondly, it's something that's a little bit nebulous, right? So I'm going to share with you the homepage of this company. So this is the homepage for Currituck County. It's the Economic Development Agency for Currituck County, okay? And if you go to thinkcurrituck.com, that's their domain, that's the URL, you are confronted with these two images, right? And I don't know how well you can see that, but the button on the left says find property, right? Because you are a business who is looking to relocate or locate or open a business in Currituck County. It says says property. And it's like, okay, that seems reasonable. But check out this other button right there. Do you see the other button? It says call Larry. Now that's a CTA, a call to action, that's right on the homepage. It says call Larry. And I saw this when I went to the Currituck County Economic Development Agency, and I thought two things. Holy wow, like, this is an economic development agency. It's a government entity. Have you ever seen anything like this? I haven't, and I look for this stuff all the time. And the second thing I thought was, who's Larry? Who's that guy? Who is he? So I clicked the button, and what it does is it leads you directly to a page in which you can either fill out a form and it'll go directly to Larry, or they give you Larry's cell phone number. So I called Larry. I clicked the button. I ended up calling Larry on his cell phone, and the answer's in his car. He's like, hello? And I'm like, hey, Larry? Yeah. I said, hi, this is Ann Handley. And he's like, good to talk to you. He doesn't know who I am. Like, Larry does not know me at all. The reason for me telling you this is because if an economic development agency can put Larry front and center in their story, in 2021, especially, I think like it's inherently valuable. And so Larry and I talked for, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes or so, because I was just fascinated by this whole idea that an economic development agency would have that kind of button on their homepage. And this is what Larry said to me. Larry said, people know what you do. You have to sell them on who you are. And that to me is just so valuable for all of us in business, because in a world where you need to build that trust and camaraderie, in a world where that your story is the best way for conveying that. Like, this is a story, right? Larry, throughout the website, throughout the social channels, he has a YouTube show called Ask Larry. That is the story that they're telling, and the way that they're cascading it throughout everything that they do and centering it around a person and a personality. Again, economic development agency, very unusual. No, that to me is really valuable. And the reason they're doing that is because, you know, what's different, Currituck County is different from any other county in the state, right? So, in their mind it is, but in the mind of anyone looking to do business. So they're humanizing the agency in a way that I just find extraordinary. And I love the way that he's not just thinking about it as like this fun, quirky, weird thing that, you know, oh, call Larry, that's funny. It is, but it has a deeper purpose that maps back to their fundamental story, which is that we are a different kind of economic development agency. We will be there for you when things go wrong, and we will show you who we are as much as we will celebrate you. And so, you know, I love that so much as an example of you know, sort of the sort of boring agency. But, you know, in my mind too, it's a great example of attaching a person to your story. And I think that's another thing that we need to do in this world where we're all virtual, right? We need to show people who we are. We need to turn the camera around, so to speak. And as much as we want to talk about our customers, we also want to show our own faces. You know, I think we need to be the voice and the face and the heart of our companies.
I'm glad you said that, because when it comes to storytelling, we have multiple options. We have different perspectives, so to speak. Yeah. So that story is told from the perspective of that organization. One of the problems and challenges I see in our world, in our industry in particular, because we do sell a lot of really cool merchandise, is that we tend to focus only on the product story itself. We sort of ignore the customer story, and we ignore our own story sometimes to our own peril. But how do we, you once said that make the customer the hero of your story, not the product. And if there's anything that's still happening in our industry that's kind of egregious in the marketing realm, it's that we are leading with product, and we're not leading with story or the impact of that product did. How do we change the perspective?
Yeah, it's funny when you say that, because I talk to audiences very often and companies very often who say, yeah, but our products are great. Like, we love our products, and I get it. Like, you're excited about it. You're excited about what you have, and so I don't mean this as a way to say you can't talk about your products. You absolutely should be talking about your products. You can talk about them, but don't just talk about the features of the product, right? Talk about the benefits to those that you sell to, who you sell to. And so that's essentially what I mean by making the customer the hero of your story. Because, you know, we all need, like, if you talk to me about, almost any product, right? It's like, oh, that's interesting. But really what in the back of our minds, again, if we're looking to build trust and affinity, it's like, what's that going to do for me? So make sure that you're hitting on those points. I think that making the customer the hero of your story essentially means put your products in context, right? Don't just talk about the product, but talk about why it matters to those you do business with, to those you sell to. Pull those stories out. Talk about the effect that your promotional products had on the people you sell to. There are some really, really magnificent stories right now in a world where we have something tangible, like a promotional product, coming into our house. Like that is just, it's such a moment. Like, create an experience around that, not from the product standpoint, but from the person who you serve, right? So in my mind, that is the really exciting piece of it. And I'll tell you just a personal story, just because I think it'll bring some of these concepts to life. So a few months ago, I spoke to a group, and they sent out a promotional pack, just like you folks did at SKUCon, to the attendees, but also to the speakers. And the items that were in there, it felt like a celebration when I opened it, So I opened the box, and it's like all beautifully branded. There was a pair of earbuds in there. That were branded. There were some like throat coat kind of like lozenges. My point of telling you this is that everything in there was branded by the company who was hosting this event, but it was designed to make me a better speaker. And they did an entire, they created a letter as well that said, like, we're so happy that you're going to be joining us. Here are some things that we thought would help you have a better experience at our event, because we are both in service to the audience of this event, right? And so that's what I find really, that to me just was like, it just warmed my heart, and it connected me not only to the organizers, but to the audience. And I thought, it reminded me, yes, we are all in this together in service to this audience. And that's a really hard thing when we're all sort of like in our own, like I'm in my tiny house office in my backyard right now, talking to almost 900 people here, and I don't see you. And so you need to create that sort of connection, right? And so that promotional product experience that I had created that connection for me that cascaded throughout the event when it actually occurred.
Yeah, you know what I love about that, Ann, is that campaign, this audience obviously is building campaigns like that all the time, but the difference is the amateurs in this will have built the same campaign for everybody. What they did was they had different sectors of an audience in that group. They targeted the speakers and said every product has an intent for this particular audience. That's what I kind of love about it. And then now this is what I sort of mean by we're entering a new era where promotional products as a medium, I told you when we were talking earlier this week that it's sort of moved up the food chain, if you will. People last year looked at what they were doing, and no longer for events, for example, they weren't saying, let's just find a good giveaway. They were saying, let's find a meaningful way to touch base with our employees who are working from home. So we were suddenly brought into these big things, and purpose and intent and meaning and emotion became a really important part of this. So we've got a unique opportunity. How do you think, you recently created a storytelling template, and something I loved, you said that your story should serve your audience in a way that tells or chronicles one person or an idea, but also has universal appeal. So why is this empathy aspect important? How do we tap into that in our marketing? And I want to say this too, that we don't tend to tap into the emotional journey of our customers near as much as we should. And in our industry, we have a vast opportunity to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sort of rooting around trying to find if I have a slide that can speak to that. Well,
it goes back to, I'll let you look, but I was curious what you meant in the template. We both studied story a lot, we've read story a lot, but that was unique that you said that your story should serve an audience in a way that chronicles one person or an idea, but that has this universal appeal.
Yes, exactly. And I found my slide for you. So it's a quote that I think is originally attributed to Stalin, but never mind that for a second, because it's still a great quote. The quote is, "The death of one is a tragedy. The death of millions is a statistic." Right. And so, yes, it's a little bit of a dark quote, and I apologize for that. But I think essentially what that means is that when you tell the story of one person, it's so much more relatable. It's so much more emotional. And that's really what allows you to build that kind of connection to the piece of content or the story. Right. And so I think it's important to not just talk about something in a broad sense, but to really distill it down into what is it that you do that helps one particular person. And the storytelling template that Bobby is referring to, I published in my email newsletter two or 3 weeks ago, I think. My email newsletter comes out every Sunday, and the story that I told broke down the well-known holiday story of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, right? And so I distilled that and created a template for businesses like yours, if you want to figure out how to tell your story in a way that resonates. And I did create a sort of a short link if you want to go check out that template. You can see it right there, bit.ly.com/SKUCon if you want to check out the template that we're talking about. But so the importance of building that narrative, that story around one person is just simply because it does make a story a whole lot more relatable. And I think, by the way, that we're seeing this throughout marketing. You know, that example that I talked about a second ago from the Currituck County Economic Development Agency around, you know, building their narrative around Larry, I think is a great example of that. But we're seeing this throughout marketing, and I think it's incredibly important in 2021 now. It's important for all of us because, you know, as we've been talking about, in a world where everyone is really disconnected from one another, we're all in our home offices or we're all sealed inside these environments and not connecting in person. I think we crave that human connection. And so it's important to make sure that your marketing and your story conveys that. So Larry was doing it pre-pandemic, but I think it's incredibly important now to do it post-pandemic. And again, I'm seeing it throughout. So just a quick example of that. The Cleveland Clinic is a healthcare organization, global healthcare organization. They publish an email newsletter every 3 times a week. It's called Health Essentials. And essentially what it is, it's a health and wellness publication. It's solid. But in a post-pandemic world, they realized that they needed something different. And so what they decided to do was publish a second email newsletter that comes directly from their CEO and president, a guy by the name of Tomislav, and I cannot pronounce his last name, so I'm not going to try. But this email newsletter comes from Tomislav once a week, and it's significant for me in the same way that the Larry example is significant, because it's coming from one person, and the way that it's written is to one person. And that's the important distinction there, right? So it's not just about telling one person's story, but it's also being aware that that one person's story you're telling is landing on the ears or the eyes or hitting the heart or the soul of that one person on the other end. And so you can see it conveyed in how Tomislav writes this newsletter that he publishes. So once a week, it's all lots of eyes in there, right? He's not talking about the hospital or the healthcare organization or the entity. He's talking about, I. And then there's lots of we. We are all in this together. This is a way of conveying empathy that I am right there with you. And lots of yous, because I'm just speaking directly to you, the person who is coming to the Cleveland Clinic for healthcare. Now, I know that people here are not healthcare organizations, but the bigger lesson there is that he is humanizing this massive organization known as Cleveland Clinic. And I think it's extraordinary the way that he's communicating. So the way that he's communicating is as important as what he's communicating.
Yeah, I love, as marketing professionals, we have had to learn to take the discipline of personas, and in salesperson's case, that's industries and verticals, and not tell a broad-based story, a broad-brush story. Sometimes in our industry, salespeople and entrepreneurs will hide behind their clients by industries and verticals, but we need to tell that particular client's story, that particular customer's journey, which is where I think where the magic really is. Another sort of for you is, how do you think the impact of telling good stories affects our own psyche and our teams and how we think about our own brands? The story we tell about ourselves has the power to become true. And I found this the case with us in our industry. You can say, I'm just in the swag business and what I sell really doesn't matter. Or you can say, you know what, I sell fire retardant clothing with a logo on it that saves lives because that's what oil and gas companies need. Or I sell kits that make connections and create emotional moments between a client and their supplier. So there's all kinds of aspects that we can go down. But how have you seen the impact of story change organizations?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because a lot of what we've been talking about here is externally focused, right? It's outbound. It's telling the story of who we are to engage our customers and the people we care about. But you're hitting on something really important, and I don't even want to call it a byproduct of story, because I think it's equally as important. And that is the ability to rally, folks internally around your purpose and your mission and who you are, not just seeing you as a promotional products company. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense, but just like healthcare, just like Cleveland Clinic is not just another healthcare provider, right? Instead, it's really wrapping your company around something that's so much more meaningful. And you talked about my new dog. I have a new little puppy. He's 5.5 months old, and his name is August. And so at the he is, yes, a pandemic puppy, I guess you could say. But this dog, he's like, I've had dogs all my life, and he is like my latest dog. And my son said to me, he's like the youngest child. You know how the youngest child gets everything that the other children did not get? So this dog is just, he has, he's just everything. Like his jacket, I do all kinds of research trying to figure out how do I keep him warm.
And then I spend on mine. So
yeah, exactly. That's exactly the case. So all that to say, so I researched the best dog tag to get for August. And I came across a company called Road ID. And I loved the way that they conveyed their story, because yes, they sell tags for dogs that go on their collar, but they don't jangle. They sort of they slide right onto the collar, so it doesn't create this like annoying jangling sound. Not for me, but for him, because can you imagine having like this thing jangling around your neck constantly? And so again, thinking about it from his point of view, I was like, I have to get the best for this dog. So they not only sell dog tags, but they also sell ID bracelets or other pieces of identity, I guess you could say, for people who are like for bicyclists who are out on the road cycling, for runners. I mean, just for anybody. If you're in an accident, it can help the authorities identify you. It can also just expedite everything, right? So I love the way that they wrap their story in something that's not just about a dog tag or around an ID bracelet. Instead, they tell very emotional, just rich stories. And to me, it sort of elevates their entire company. So it's not just about selling tags that can help you find your dog faster, right? Instead, it's about making sure that we take care of those we love the most around us. And I love the way that they sort of create a bigger mission around that, which I think is so valuable.
It's huge. How have you seen, obviously this past year, about a little earlier, accelerated a lot of these challenges and opportunities.
Yeah.
How have you seen COVID-19 and our experience with this past year change how we're going to go, how we're going to do marketing in the future? I know you just put out the 2021 content marketing report that I highly recommend everyone goes to check out. But things have changed. And I think for someone like you, a lot is coming around because you've been talking about it for a while. But what do you see that's changing permanently for us in the future based on this past year?
Yeah, there's a few things. I mean, gosh, we could have probably focused our entire conversation today about that. But I think there's a few things that have really, bubbled up for me. I mean, certainly the evolution of digital is unparalleled. And we've talked about that a little bit, but using this opportunity that we have in a way to communicate through channels like this, I think is really significant. And I also think, though, that the another aspect of that has been that it does create this kind of empathy that is that I haven't seen necessarily within organizations quite to the degree that I have before. And I mean that in a few ways. For example, empathy between colleagues. Like I have a sense of what people who I work with are struggling with now because I see their home setup. I see their sort of kids flying in and out. I see questions about homeschooling. So it gives you a richer sense of the people you are your colleagues, like the people that you work with every single day. So that may feel like kind of a softer thing, but I think it actually creates a stronger company because it creates more empathetic bonds between the people within a company. And I think that ultimately, cascades into how you do business, how you present. So that's one thing. I think, you can extrapolate that out too, to look at the way that executives at companies are communicating now. And one of my favorite examples of that has been, when I see big companies who will put their CEO or their president on camera and have he or she convey actual real emotion when they're talking to their customers. Marriott Corporation did a really tremendous job with this at the very beginning of the pandemic, when every company out there, and maybe yours, I know mine is guilty of this too, but every company out there was sending emails that said, we are all in this together, right? How many emails did we get like that? But what Marriott did really stood apart for me, and I think in some ways really set the bar for what we should be doing as companies, in that they had Arne Sorensen. Arne is the CEO of Marriott Corporation, and they put him on camera, and for 5 minutes he talked about the effects of the pandemic on the hospitality industry, on Marriott, and what that meant for Marriott associates, their need to furlough, their need to close a number of hotels temporarily, that kind of thing. And so I share that with you as an example of just to go back to your question, of what I see. Like, I see a lot more executives being more accessible and being okay with not being 100% buttoned up and perfect, because Arne was, he physically welled up at certain points throughout his conversation, throughout that 5-minute video. And I just thought that was so extraordinary, and you can look at how that has taken effect. I think that's a direct line to the Cleveland Clinic's new email newsletter, right? The way that Thomas Lab is the voice and the face of it. So I think that accessibility to executives and our willingness to kind of put ourselves out there in a way that, even if it's not perfect, is ultimately a really good thing for marketing. I mean, it's weird to think about the pandemic having any upside, right? But I think that that could potentially be one.
But like the 2008 recession, these things do change the way we go to market and the way we do business.
Yeah.
One of my favorite topics that you talk about, and the reason why it's my favorite is because you talk to some of the largest companies in the world. And it's my favorite because it's relative to all of us. It's related to all of us. The audience that we're speaking to is diverse. We've got manufacturers, we've got agencies, but to generalize when it comes to marketing, they all fall into two categories. Mm-hmm. Those who have the bandwidth to do marketing well, you probably know where I'm going with this, and those who lack the bandwidth or the team to deploy a full marketing strategy and to do marketing well. So what happens is we end up trying to do everything at once. And so what we end up doing is doing a real meager and honestly pathetic marketing in every area, as opposed to focusing on one thing. You talk about how marketing should shift from ASAP, as slow as possible, to as soon as possible, to ASAP, slow as possible, or where you called it elsewhere, slow down to speed up. Yeah. The reason I love the topic is because I think entrepreneurs get overwhelmed. They should be doing everything. Why should we be doing marketing more slowly? And can you explain your quote, do less and obsess?
Yeah. So when I talk about ASAP or as slow as possible, I don't mean that you should be, carving your email communications on like stone tablets and then just like, driving them in wheelbarrows around to your customers. Like, I'm not talking about slowing down everything, but what I am talking about is slowing down, maybe pausing what you're doing, getting a sense of who is it that we're speaking to. Do we truly have that sort of honest empathy for the people that we want to connect with? Are we actually telling that story that we need to tell in a way that will resonate, that will build that trust and affinity? Have we actually stopped and thought about what is it that we're doing more holistically? And then at that point, let's start like adding in some tactics. And the struggle that you spoke about a second ago, just about, entrepreneurs especially feel like they need to be everywhere and do everything. That's a struggle that I hear from massive companies, and I hear it from companies that have a part-time marketer of one. I think it's a problem that we all have. And so what does that mean? It means that, just to do less and obsess. Don't worry about being everywhere. Don't worry about being on Instagram and TikTok and making sure that you're posting to Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn. Pick one channel, do it incredibly well. And then when you have the bandwidth, then add in the next channel and the next. I think we get into trouble when we look at things as we need to be everywhere. And we decide that we're going to, let's see, we created this on this story on Instagram, we should create it as a let's save it as a video and let's put it up on Facebook, and then let's put a version of it on TikTok. Like I think that's the wrong strategy. I think it's much better to narrow your focus, to slow down, to pull back and think, okay, what truly matters? What is the best channel for us right now based on what we love doing, number one? Because if you hate doing it, especially if you're an entrepreneur, then you're not going to sustain it long term. And then how can we actually, do more with that channel? I talk a lot about, not just storytelling, but story moments, right? I think creating sort of story momentum is much better than just, putting a story out here and here and here, right? It's much better to build momentum with an audience and to sort of build that trust and affinity using one channel or however many channels you're capable of doing, but focusing on one to start with if you have that sort of bandwidth issue, like, again, so many of us do, and really focus on building that momentum and not just sort of dropping moments, here and there.
What I love about that is that according to the 2021 Content Marketing Report, 73% of top content marketing performers nurture audiences. Mm-hmm. And what's really cool about that is that in this industry, the fastest sales are through your existing client base. And yes. So everything from your newsletter you had, where you suddenly had 45,000 subscribers with a 40% open rate or something like that, of these activities, things like story, is all about nurturing that audience. And I love the language, because when we shift from marketing where it feels like it's military language, where we're targeting and we're blasting and we're shooting and we're doing all these things, nurturing an audience is a different. And the other thing is, it is a discipline. Like, it's going to take us some time.
Yeah, right. Although that makes it sound like it's not fun when you call it a discipline. It makes it sound like you have to do a bunch of sit-ups every morning. And so while I agree with it, I do think that it's something you have to practice, every single day to be extraordinary at it. I hate that word discipline as relates to marketing, because it just feels like, God, it feels like I have to eat, I don't know, kale every day. So I think it's much better to think about, creating that momentum is the way that I think about it. You just said something and I was just thinking about, you were talking about newsletters, right? I think that one of the problems that we have in this industry, as well as almost any industry out there, is that we're not really thinking about using that, the channels that we already are good at, like something like Clubhouse comes out, right? Which is the latest sort of platform, a social platform that's on my radar. It's straight up audio only. It's like a series of all the accounts on there are basically like a series of like call-in radio shows, right? So we look at something like a Clubhouse and we're like, oh, should we be on there? When we ignore things that actually work for us and that we know work for us, and that includes email. And talking about email just feels like so old school, but it's not. It's actually one of the best ways to nurture your audience long term, to remind them that you're still here. The problem, though, is that I think a lot of us are not that we're squandering that opportunity. So rather than thinking about the newsletter as a special opportunity, instead we think about it as a distribution strategy, right? It's something that we sort of dash off. I was just going to say that I think, so when you think about that word newsletter, right? So many companies focus on the first part of that word. They focus on the news. They focus on what they want to say, that we want to talk about our products. We want to talk about new revolutions that are happening within our industry or whatever the case may be. But rather than focusing on the news, I think we need to focus on the second part of that word, which is the letter. So how can we actually write it in a way that it's just to one person, like my friend Thomas Lav at the Cleveland Clinic does? How do we actually think about the letter piece of it as the opportunity, a very special opportunity to connect with one person at one time? And I think it just changes the way that you communicate. I think it changes the way that you focus.
It's quite possible too. There's been this resurgence in the newsletter. It's quite possible that, much like the mailbox, when we all went email, the mailbox was abandoned, then it became an opportunity. Yeah. Now we all abandoned email for Slack, and email is still sitting there with actually opportunity right now.
Yeah, right. Is anybody wondering about this fireplace behind me? Like, we haven't even talked about this.
I know I was going to bring it up, but I totally forgot. We're having an actual fireplace. Didn't you bring some?
Yeah.
We need to run.
Well, just one.
That's
and
awesome.
Everyone here is in the promotional products industry, and so I'm just going to share the weenie that I made to show you that that you should not fear for your jobs if you sell promotional weenies like this, because you're not going to get any competition from me. So yeah, so I created this for you guys, thinking that if things lagged a little bit, you need a little snack, I got you here for you.
Yeah, we're covered. And I can't tell you how thankful I am you joined us, and it's been a long time. We've been trying to get you here involved in the community for a while, and it's just kind of a dream come true for me. Thank you for your friendship, not just to me, but to this community and to our medium. You've always been respectful. Folks don't know, but back when I was a distributor, we used to sell to Marketing Profs, and we created some cool campaigns for the Marketing Profs B2B conference. And we had a lot of fun doing it. And so you're a big believer in what we do. Thank you for supporting us. And
thank you. It's, I'm honored to be here with you. Thank you for having me. And I'm sad that we're not together in person. I see all these people in the audience, and I wish that I was able to look at you face to face, and that I could join you, this afternoon for a drink, because that's just, that's the part of it that is hard about this. But anyway, thank you for having me.
Give Augie a hug for me.
I will.
All right. Thank you, Anne.